I was lucky enough to get a great job after I graduated. I make pretty good money, and my job is challenging but fun. Some of my friends didn't bother with college, and some who did chose less lucrative fields. I'm not rich or anything. I'm not buying a Porsche anytime soon. I have a good salary and very few bills since I still live at home. I got a nice hiring bonus when I was recruited, and I took my friends out for what I made clear was a one-time celebration. Every once in a while, I get together with my friends and go to a restaurant. We usually end up splitting the bill. I don't drink a lot, so I might have a beer with my meal, but that's it. I know they don't all have disposable income as I do, so I usually also cover the tip. But they tend to go overboard. Like one girl orders 5 or 6 drinks throughout the meal, and she'll order appetizers for the table. I never eat the appetizers because they almost are always deep fried, and I tend to avoid that stuff. It's also common for one of us to leave and just Cash App or leave the money for the bill. Last Saturday, we went out to a nice Mexican place. The food was excellent, and my margarita was delicious. That girl brought her girlfriend, and some guys brought their girlfriends, and I mentioned that I had to have an early night. So after we finished eating, I hung around till everyone started ordering more drinks and desserts and stuff. And I'm not joking here. One girl ordered a to-go meal for her roommate. I excused myself and went to the bathroom. Afterward, I paid my bill at the front of the house and bailed. I started getting texts about 45 minutes later. The bill came and they wanted to split it. I told them I had already paid and had to leave. My bill was $55, including the tip. The 3 guys and the girl were going to split the remaining $640. They wanted to split their guest bill as well. The other guy who didn't invite someone was saying that it wasn't fair for him to split the bill when I didn't. I said that I had paid for my food bill and wouldn't give more. They ended up each getting their own bill, and one guy ended up paying for his dates, and her roommate's food. He's especially salty about the situation. The other single guy also ended up just paying for his stuff, which is also in their bad books. I feel bad about leaving without saying goodbye, but if I had stuck around, I would be subsidizing food for strangers. So am I the idiot for doing an Irish exit? He's especially salty about the situation. Poor guy. He was trying to get everyone else to pay for it and failed. He'd also be salty if he tried to steal $100 out of your wallet and you caught him. Not the idiot. Yes, it would have been better to be more direct, but the reason for their upset isn't because you left without saying anything. It's for failing to subsidize their greed. So if you want to hang around these people again, just be blunt from the start that it's separate checks. Funny how his date and her roommate didn't pay in either. Maybe you should be salty at them instead. Oh, when someone took the takeout meal. Some folks are so cheeky. But I feel like you should have gone back to the table and said, "Hey, I paid for my portion. Good to see you guys. I have an early morning." Besides that, you're not expected to pay anybody else's bills, so they have no cause to be upset. There wasn't a single complaint about the Irish goodbye, just that there were problems splitting the bill. Also, in the age of Venmo, who splits a bill evenly anymore? I've never seen anyone under 40 want to do that unless they were trying to get others to cover their excess. They're salty because they over-imbibed, so others foot some of the bill. Nice job, OP. My husband's friend, Joe, passed away after a long struggle with cancer. I was obviously devastated by this loss. We were good friends, but I'm admittedly not on good terms with his widow. I can't pinpoint what the exact issue is between us. All I can say is that we don't get along. My biggest blow-up with her was after I posted health updates about Joe on my social media account. I thought this was normal since we have a lot of mutual friends, but she clearly had an issue with it. She called me names and then blocked me. Now, the funeral's going to be in 2 days. I just found out I got excluded by her. My husband is still going, which I found unfair and quite devastating. I didn't want to miss Joe's funeral, but I can't do anything about it now. I did tell my husband that I expected him to stay home and not go after I got excluded. He snapped and said what I expected was unfair and that whatever petty fight between Joe's widow and me was none of his concern. I told him that I was his wife and he should stand by me. especially when I was being treated like this. But he said it wasn't his problem. Now we're not speaking because of it. Some mutual friends are siding with me. Others think Joe's widow created this situation to begin with. Oh dear, you did what? I'd be furious too if a non-related posted health updates about my husband on social media. Someone's personal health struggles aren't your issues to use to get clout or sympathy. You are the idiot. The funeral isn't about you. It's about the family and what they need, not what you want. But she thought that was normal. On what planet is it normal to post someone's private health information online? Geez, woman, you did it for attention, and it was an extreme violation of trust. Why would anyone talk to you after doing something like that? You are the idiot 1,000 times over. Agreed. OP thinks the whole world revolves around herself. This is not about you. OP, it's about your husband's friend. Keep your own petty issues out of this. Also, biggest blow-up, indicating there have been other blow-ups. OP knows exactly why this wife doesn't like her. It's BS that she's not sure. They just don't get along. From the vibe of this story, I'm betting OP didn't just post health updates on socials, but was obnoxious about it. Plus, she's starting drama with their friends when the focus should be on supporting Joe's wife. Instead, she's centering herself on someone else's grief. It's very self-absorbed. OP has some serious main character syndrome going on. Stop making this all about you. You not being invited was 100% of your own making. Your husband, on the other hand, did nothing wrong. Let him go and mourn his friend. He deserves to say his last respects. You're only excluded for your own insensitive actions. Accused him of being unfair. Try looking in a mirror. His job as your husband is to help you be better, not stand by you when you're being worse. My husband and I have 2 kids, my stepdaughter, teen, and our son, young child. My husband's family and I don't get along. Honestly, we're all at fault for that. When I first met them, I thought they were a bunch of snobs, so I didn't act very friendly towards them. And they are, in fact, a bunch of snob idiots, so they weren't very friendly to me either. We got into a lot of fights, and it was awful to the point that they said they didn't want to have anything to do with me, my husband, or any of our future kids. They only wanted to stay in contact with my husband's daughter, who was 4 back then. My husband agreed because he thought it would be unfair for his daughter to lose her family because of us. It's now a problem for us, because my son has started to notice that he's being treated unfairly. He hasn't even met my husband's siblings. All he knows is that his sister gets a lot of good gifts for Christmas, birthdays, and other occasions, and he doesn't. For Christmas, they bought a PS5 for her. We made it clear to her that since she needs to use our TV to play, she has to share it with her brother. Of course, she threw a tantrum that it was her console and he was going to break it, but she finally agreed. 4 days ago was my stepdaughter's birthday, and guess what she got? A TV. I told my husband this had to stop. We can't let them treat our son like that. We told them that unless they start treating the kids equally, they won't be able to see stepdaughter again. They became outraged and called us idiots for taking their child away. They kept sending texts and calling us different names, so we had to block them. When we told stepdaughter, she had another tantrum. She was crying and yelling at us for an hour. She hasn't been talking to us in 4 days, doesn't come out of her bedroom, and is crying the entire time. My husband thinks that we're idiots and we should just let her see his family, but I'm not sure. Am I the idiot? Edit. I've raised my stepdaughter her whole life, so yes, I'm her mom, and that's what she calls me. I didn't stop my in-laws from having a relationship with my son. It was their choice. We tried to invite them to meet our son, but they refused. My husband has even been trying to fix things with them. He loves his family and is hurting a lot by not seeing them, but they don't want to fix things. You are the idiot. It was you who didn't want anything to do with your in-laws. It was you who didn't want your biological child to have any type of relationship with your in-laws. You do not get to make that choice with your stepdaughter now that you see your biological child being left out because of your actions. Your in-laws are acting accordingly. You messed up, and now you want the benefit of all the goodies. Totally agree. All this RTV talk, makes me think stepdaughter gets a very clear visual of how it's her versus them. That child is counting down the day when she can dump her stepmother and go. Match your gifts with your own money for your son. He's not owed anything, and neither are you, OP. How do you want to cut off his family, but expect presents for your children from them? They're practically strangers, so of course they favor the child they actually know. So you brought this about, and now you want to complain about it? You didn't think of this before you broke your relationship with them. They clearly stated that this would be a consequence. So now that your son is being affected, you want to upend her life? Stop making your children pay because you're unfriendly and hold grudges. It's not their grudge to bear. Geez, not the idiot. Everyone here is going way too hard. This is way more than just a PS5. This is one kid living in the lap of luxury and the other barely getting by. I bet half of y'all would be the first people talking about the evils of capitalism, and yet here we are blaming a kid because he's upset someone in his life basically flaunts money in front of them, which is absolutely tasteless. Your in-laws are idiots because clearly they're bribing this child. As adults, they are aware of the situation that they're creating, especially with that weird "their child" comment. They're breeding resentment between siblings, and that's awful. My son had his wedding days ago. We had some past issues that affected our relationship. No, we're not on speaking terms, after he decided to sell his grandmother's home, my wife's mother, instead of keeping it. He sent his mom an invitation but didn't include me. I was fine with that. I didn't try to fight back. However, I refused to drive my wife to the wedding. She's disabled and cannot drive, and we live 3 hours away. I said that since I'm not invited to the wedding, nor am I taking part in it, then I shouldn't have to drive there. My wife told me I was being unreasonable and punishing her for our son's decision, but I told her it was on her to make travel arrangements since she is an adult, or he could have provided proper means of transportation for her and not assumed I'd go there when I wasn't welcome. We had an argument, and she ended up being taken there by my brother. She refused to speak to me upon her return, and my brother said I was in the wrong for letting her fend for herself when I and my car were available. Info. I have so many questions. If it was your wife's mother and not yours, why were you so upset about your son, who inherited it, I suppose, selling it? What did you do? There's something you're not telling us. What did you do to upset your son so much? Or is he so petty that he didn't invite you just because you said, I think you shouldn't sell the house? Clearly, there's a much larger backstory as to why his son went no contact with him. The son apparently sold his maternal grandparents' home, not OP's parents. OP's wife was still invited and wanted to go. So there's more to this story than revealed. OP, your wife is disabled. It was the wedding of yours and your wife's son, and she wanted to go. It was time to pull up your big boy pants. You are the idiot. She's right. You were punishing her because of your son's decision. If she hadn't been able to find an alternative ride, then she would have been trapped at home and unable to go. You would have forced her to miss something really important because your feelings are hurt and your ego is bruised. Forget the drama with your son. This puts you in the bad husband category. She's essentially asking him to drive 6 hours and then stay hours alone, watching from the outside his son getting married in a ceremony that he wasn't invited to. He can and appears to be an idiot. It doesn't make asking something like that okay, though, especially given that the other people could simply drive her to the wedding, like the brother. It's everyone's the idiot here. His son should have made arrangements for her. Did he really think, given the situation, that OP was going to bring her? I can't understand why this was left to the day of to discuss. I feel bad for the wife for being stuck in the middle of all of this. That being said, she knew about it and should have thought about transportation when she got the invitation and saw it was just for her. Ignoring the massive amount of missing information from this story, I don't understand all the people saying that OP's the idiot here. If you were explicitly not invited to a wedding, but were asked to drive 6 hours round trip, plus however long the wedding is, it would be an unreasonable request. I mean, not the idiot for that, but I wonder if the rest of the missing story would change things. I, 20 female, am a college student living with 4 roommates in a shared off-campus house. One of my 4 roommates is not a roommate on our lease, but one of my other roommates' boyfriends. I am not happy about this, but it is what it is. We'll call the boyfriend/roommate Kevin, 21. I had a paper due at 11:59 one night last week. I was really late getting started, so to say I was on a time crunch would be an understatement. Around a little after 7, Kevin came into my room and asked me if I could drive him to work, which is about 20 to 25 minutes away, because he left his laptop there and he had a quiz that he needed to take that was due that night. I apologized and told him I couldn't do it because I had a deadline. He proceeded to ask me if he could just use my car, and I said no. When he asked why, I told him because the car belonged to my parents and they didn't want anyone else driving it but me. Kevin got very angry and told me that I was being unreasonable because it would only take about 45 minutes and we'd be back home before 8, and that if he took my car, he was just going to go straight there and back. I said I was sorry, but I couldn't help him, and he sulked out of my room and slammed the door. I actually started to feel really bad and was going to offer to take the break after I got to a good point in my paper to take him. Then I heard him in the next room complaining to his girlfriend on the phone about me and calling me all kinds of nasty names. So I just put my headphones in and concentrated on my paper. About an hour passed by, and he came back into my room and asked me if I could send him money for an Uber to go pick up his laptop. I said, no, why would you take money from a witch? And basically repeated all the names he called me. He then tried to apologize and say that he was just stressed out and that he didn't mean it. I said no again and he lost it. I picked up my laptop and some clothes and went to my boyfriend's house to stay the night and finish my paper, which I finally managed to submit at 11:45, thankfully. When I came back the next day, my roommate, who's Kevin's girlfriend, yelled at me for making Kevin miss an assignment when he gave me the 3 options to help him. We ended up fighting, and things have been tense in the house ever since. One of our other roommates thinks I didn't do anything wrong, but the other roommate thinks I should have just helped Kevin to keep the peace in the house. I feel like an idiot for making things in the house tense and making Kevin's grade in that class lower. It would have been less effort to take him than to deal with all the fighting and awkwardness. Not the idiot in the slightest. Your roommate's boyfriend shouldn't be living there unless he's paying rent. Second, you have no obligation to drive him anywhere, and being as you don't really know him, I don't know why he would expect you to let him drive your parents' car. And lastly, this is a grown man. Bro doesn't have his own car or money for an Uber? What a loser. Right? Why would it ever be on OP to give him money for an Uber? I could probably go out right now and find 20 people who will not lend me their car for 45 minutes. And guess how many of them would give me money for an Uber as a result? The boy is sheltered, and apparently, he needs to have the sense to remember his computer at work too. You had 3 choices to help him. What the heck is that? Some test? Why couldn't his girlfriend or parents send him money for an Uber? Are you supposed to be the ATM? Seriously? These people are messed up. You should have a house meeting and make it clear that you're not responsible for Kevin. You should also be clear that you'll never tolerate verbal abuse. And if Kevin wants to continue staying in the house, he must apologize. If he refuses, bring up the issue that he's not on the lease. And if it continues to cause problems, you will inform the landlord. Don't let him make this behavior acceptable. Don't try to be nice to keep the peace.